Hey, my name is Samantha Taylor, and this is my unit plan presentation for our final project. I decided to do my final project on narrative writing because this is a skill that I've seen a lot of my ELs struggle with within the general ed classroom. I teach seventh grade ELA at a junior high in Mississippi. So I decided to just use this as an opportunity to create some differentiated lessons that I would be able to use with my ESL students. To start, I have two main goals when designing all the activities and assessments in my unit. The first, I want them to be able to identify all the elements of narrative. I specifically focus on plot, setting, character, and conflict throughout my unit. So they need to be able to identify those four things in any text that they read. We do spend a lot of time discussing the effectiveness of those types of elements of narrative. So that's thrown in there as well. But my main goal is just being able to find them within the story that they're reading. And then the other goal is for them to be able to write their own narrative based on pictures. The reason I have this based on pictures part added is because my EL students have to take the Lost Links exam in order to graduate from the program and show mastery. And they will see a lot of prompts, writing prompts on that exam where they are given a picture and they're asked to either describe that picture in a lot of details or to write a story based on that picture. So I tried to design a lot of the activities based on that type of prompt so that students are used to seeing it. And again, I'm keeping my own learners in mind. I have 5 EL students this year who all have really strong speaking and listening skills for the most part. They struggle a lot more with reading and writing, and a lot of their test scores reflect that. Like when they took the Lost Links in 6th grade, a lot of them were able to score proficient and advanced on speaking and listening, and then scored as like beginner intermediate on their reading and writing. So my focus is definitely more so on the reading and writing for this unit based on what my students are struggling with. Um, so I created 3 lesson plans based on this theme. This is the one that I didn't script out, my introduction, but essentially we would start with the essential question, why do we tell stories? Get students thinking about like the cultural aspect of storytelling, how stories are passed down from generations. They're used to teach lessons, to teach about the history of a group, to pass down cultural values and things like that. We'll have a lesson on the elements of narrative, which again is going to be like setting, plot, characters, conflict. We'll read a narrative as together as a class where students will have a paper copy. We'll annotate as we read, and then we'll also complete a graphic organizer to practice identifying together as a class. And this would be a similar activity to what students will be asked to do in groups and independently in future lessons. So today is very much a hands-on, I do, you watch kind of lesson to get students prepared to do things more independently later. This is the first lesson that I scripted out. And it's a speaking listening lesson. So it would start with me teaching students about how to participate in group discussions. I created a like sentence starter guide for how to agree in a group discussion, how to disagree. That's the main like language objective for this lesson. And then I would break students into ability groups. So I have 3 different kind of like scaffolded activities. One is for learners who are on a K through 1st grade reading level. One is for students on a 2nd, 3rd grade reading level, and one is on 4th through 5th. My own students all are testing around like a 4th grade reading level on their STAR reading test and a lot of the tests that I give them in the ELA classroom. So I scaffolded down from there based on what other learners might also be in my class. I tried to pick articles and stories that were all based on like cultural lessons. So like one's about language barriers. One is about like a cultural tradition, and a student or the character has to learn how to appreciate her own culture because she starts off kind of embarrassed about some of the things that her family does that her neighbors aren't doing. And the last is like a folk tale. But students are going to have to read that passage. They have to identify some vocabulary words within that passage. They're going to identify their elements of narrative. And then they're going to, they have some sentence stems that they can use to create a presentation where they'll get to tell their story to the class as a way to practice their speaking and listening skills. So that's this lesson. And then the next lesson briefly is a reading writing lesson where we are going to practice looking at a photograph and writing a story with a clear beginning, middle, and end. They're going to have lots of like graphic organizers and things. The language focus here is going to be on past tense. So as part of the mini lesson, I focus on past tense verbs. What are signs that a verb already is past tense? How to like put some words into past tense. Like we talk a little bit about irregular verbs. But mostly we're focusing on like that adding ed to the end for sure. And then this is a cool activity where students are going to be in mixed ability groups. So this way higher students can help lower students, and they're going to migrate between 3 stations. So at station 1, they'll have a big piece of butcher paper on the wall, and they're going to have a picture, and they have to write the beginning of the story. So they'll have like 10 minutes to write, and then we'll switch. They'll move to the next picture, which should already have a beginning at this point with a different picture. And this time they'll write the middle based on what the other group has already written. And then with the last station, they would have a new picture, and this time they're adding the ending. And then they would get to read those stories out loud and kind of see how the different groups changed and adapted based on what was already written. So it's a good collaborative storytelling, focusing on that past tense verbs, which I think will be fun. And then the assessment component to end. So the first one is like a more traditional test where students are going to have to read a passage they haven't seen before. Again, I differentiated these passages. So there's a K through 1, 2 through 3, 4 through 5th grade levels. But all the questions are the same. So they're all identifying for the same elements of narrative. I think there's a writing component on each of these tests where they will have the same picture and get to write a short story. And then the more fun assessment is where students are all going to bring in a picture from their family. So they get to choose what picture. And then I'm going to have them like lay out all those pictures at the front table. Students will get to pick one that's not their own, write a story based on this new picture. And then at the end, as kind of a unit closer to like remember why we tell stories and why storytelling is so important, they'll read their stories out loud, and the other students in the room will guess to see if they can figure out which one reflects their photograph. Hopefully this wasn't too long. I'm really bad at keeping to time, but this is my unit. I hope you enjoyed it. And then I also look forward to sharing with you guys or getting to see your videos as well. Thanks.